Hello. So today I'm going to talk about why I stayed in the cult of Ashtanga Yoga for as long as I did, which was about a little over 2 decades. People ask me all the time, why did you stay in a cult? Why did you stay in Ashtanga for that long? And the short answer is a few reasons. Choice feminism, identity investment, the cost of it, like the sunk cost, spiritual bypassing, and the belief that you can separate the art from the artist. There are more, but these are the key sort of points. And yet these explanations are way too clean, right? Because the reality is much messier. But it's really about how all of these narratives sort of worked together to override not only my perception, but the community's perception, normalize harm, and convince us that staying was empowerment. So this isn't about weakness. It's about how high control systems, how cults trap intelligent, capable people. And let's just walk through some of these. So the main reason that I stayed was because of this idea of choice feminism, which is choice feminism is the belief that any choice a woman makes is inherently feminist simply because she made the choice. I told myself, I'm choosing to be here. I'm strong enough to handle it. I'm setting boundaries. I confronted Joyce and told him to fuck off. So if I'm choosing this, I'm empowering myself. Instead of questioning the system, I questioned myself. And we all did that. We weren't able to actually get to what was the problem. We made the problem our problem. And that lie is actually what kept me there, because the truth is that choice doesn't happen in a vacuum. Your choices are shaped by your community, social upbringing. In regards to Ashtanga Yoga, it's shaped by the silence, the hierarchy, the normalization, the sunk cost. Yeah, that's a thing. The spiritual framing, and the belief, very subtle belief, that leaving means a little kind of a failure, or you don't get it. And once your choice is framed as empowering, anything that challenges that, anyone that challenges that feels like an attack. So I didn't stay because I didn't see the harm. I stayed because the system and the community taught us to call it our choice. You know, that's how women get trapped, not through force, but through conditioning that's kind of disguised as empowerment. Choice feminism told me that choosing to stay meant that I was empowered. And that only makes systems of abuse stronger, not the students. And there were other narratives that I mentioned earlier that I bought into. Each one felt sophisticated because each one helped me to avoid seeing the truth. So let's get into it. Separating the art from the artist. God, this one drives me absolutely bananas because it's insidious and it sounds so reasonable. You know, the practice is still valuable, but the method works. I can take what's good and leave the rest. But the problem is that this framing is borrowing from conversations about art and music. Modalities of expression that are a completely, fundamentally different relationship. Yeah, you can walk away from a painting, a work of art, you can turn off a song. But the main thing is that art does not require access to your body. Yoga does, especially Ashtanga Yoga, where physical adjustments are part of the practice, they're part of the method. You cannot turn off the physical memory of how you were touched, adjusted, or positioned. And in Ashtanga Yoga, adjustments are not optional. They're the method's foundation. Even if a teacher tells you they're optional, and we're going to talk more about this later, even if adjustments are framed as optional in your class, they're really not. These adjustments require intimacy, consent, and vulnerability. And when that's violated in any way, you can't separate the good parts from the harm. The harm happened in your body. Your body remembers what your mind denies. We know this. Separate the art from the artist does not apply to yoga because the method itself grants physical access. The abuse was not an accident. It's embedded in the structure, in the system, in the intimacy, in the hierarchy, in the method. When people say, just separate the art from the artist about yoga context, what they're really saying is, you ready? I want to keep benefiting from the system, from the practice, without confronting the harm that made that system possible. The reason I know what that means is because I said that too for years. I said all of these for years. I told myself that the lineage is bigger than Joyce. Joyce doesn't own yoga. That I could practice with integrity even if he didn't. But the truth is it's simpler than that. The truth is that I was trying to protect my investment, my identity, my community, and my career. It had nothing to do with the safety of the students. And every Ashtanga teacher now is doing exactly the same thing. Because if you admit to yourself that the practice cannot be ethically separated, then you have to admit that you spent decades promoting something harmful. That is unbearable. And it's also pretty pathetic because what should be unbearable is to be that unethical. But anyway, so, you know, we all perform those ethical gymnastics in order to convince yourselves that you can have it both ways. You can keep the practice, condemn the abuse, and stay innocent. But you can't. None of us can. You can't ethically practice and teach something that requires violation to transmit. Even if you call it trauma-informed, even if you say adjustments are optional and you have consent cards, we'll talk more about this later. So something else that we used to talk about, when I say we, I'm talking about authorized and certified teachers in Mysore. We would make an academic false equivalence, meaning the justification would be, it's like academia. There's a teacher, you're learning a system, and there's a lineage of knowledge transmission. This comparison sounds sophisticated. It makes the hierarchy feel legitimate, intellectual, normal, but it's false. Because in academia, you can publicly critique your advisor's work. You can write papers that challenge their theories. You can disagree with them in seminars, in journals, and conferences. Academia has review boards, ethics committees, grievance procedures. There are formal mechanisms in place for accountability. Your advisor also, doesn't control your whole career, your whole professional future. There are other programs at the universities. You get what I'm saying. In yoga, none of that exists. There is no institutional oversight, no ethics review, no formal grievance process, no accountability. You can't write a paper challenging the guru's method without being labeled whatever. And right, if you leave one teacher, the entire lineage usually closes ranks against you. So, and also the teaching requires physical access, those adjustments, the touch, the vulnerability. So the truth here is pretty simple. Academia has protections, yoga does not, and that's the main difference. So coming to the points that I made earlier about the illusion of optional adjustments, people love to say that adjustments are optional in Ashtanga yoga. And technically, sure, you can decline. But the truth is that nothing is optional when you're the only one opting out. Okay? When everyone is moving like deeper or faster, progressing faster, having breakthroughs, getting attention, getting that connection, it doesn't matter if someone says, let me know if you don't want an adjustment. It doesn't matter because you're navigating group pressure, hierarchy, the desire to belong. That's so natural. The fear of being seen as difficult. Hello, womanhood. The belief that saying no means whatever. The silent stigma. There's so much that comes along with opting out or saying no, that it's really just like structural coercion, but, with prayer hands and mala beads and a yogic smile. So because when you do that, what you're choosing isolation. You're choosing, she's not ready, she's too resistant or whatever. So you go along with it, you let it happen, you adapt to the culture, you surrender, and there you are. Another one was sort of this Jonestown parallel. We would compare it to Jonestown, because that's a mega violent cult and it's a horrible thing that happened. But these parallels to really super violent cults is completely not appropriate. Cults happen on a spectrum. And there are different ways in which cults are high control groups. And yoga communities are absolutely high control groups, especially Ashtanga yoga. Next is the spiritual bypassing, the spiritual framing of the spiritual vocabulary, of that the discomfort was a kind of purification, that resistance is part of the path and you move through it. Then your intuition becomes fear, your discomfort is labeled as immature, your boundaries become resistant, right? That's another way. Identity investment. This is huge because this is the part that no one really wants to talk about. Is that, at the time that I left, I was one of 20 women worldwide certified to teach. So my identity, my income, my credibility, my entire life was built around this system, and leaving meant losing all of it, right? And what finally happened around 2018, when I finally walked away, I made a public statement and I closed my school and I started studying Ayurvedic medicine. I never sent an email to Sharat or to the Joyce family saying that I no longer wanted to be on the list of certified authorized teachers. I didn't think it was necessary. I didn't think I needed to sort of erase that part of my history. I never contacted them, but I was silently removed off of the list because this is how a cult works, is that you cannot speak up. Or those are the consequences. You are silently removed. And then over time, my story and what I witnessed and my testimony was also erased from the community. So make no mistake, Ashtanga is absolutely a cult. The sunk cost, 20 plus years, thousands and thousands of dollars, global community, trips to Mysores, trainings. It's ridiculous. And then the myth of exceptionalism. This is a big one for Ashtanga practitioners. None of them want to admit it, but they all think that they're somehow a little bit exceptional. And I am saying this as someone who was inside and knows these people very, very well. There is this sort of ego trap in Ashtanga yoga, and it makes sense in that you're practicing so intensely that your ego gets caught up in it and you start to feel kind of special. You start to feel kind of exceptional. You're doing all of these postures that really, very few people in the world can do, and you do it with grace and with ease, and your Instagram is really beautiful. And so it's this, you're exceptional. That's the lie. That's another giant lie that Ashtangis tell themselves. So the truth is that why did I stay? A lot of reasons. Choice feminism, separating the art from the artist, comparisons to really violent cults, not understanding that cults operate on a spectrum and in a very nuanced manner, incremental normalization, identity investment, isolation, spiritual language, exceptionalism. I wasn't trapped by force. I was trapped by a system that taught me to not question the system, because that's what makes systems stronger. And that's how you know, because the scariest part is that I defended it for decades. And that's how you know that it worked. Bum. So, yep, that's a scoop. If you know of someone that would really benefit from watching this, please share, please like, please subscribe. If you know of someone that wants to hate watch this, send it to them. Many people just hate watch my stuff, and I see you. Anyway, more soon.